Hi, I'm Lauren with AADL.
And I'm Nate from Common Cycle. This is the first of a two-part video series about how to prepare to ride your bike in the winter.
Winter bike riding has its challenges. For one thing, bike riding conditions aren't ideal. Snow, slush, ice, and other winter debris can take a toll on your bicycle. But with some preparation beforehand and some care after you ride, you can keep your bike in good shape all winter long.
Let's go inside the Common Cycle workshop and get started.
Okay, Nate, so you and I were talking earlier and you mentioned that there's a check that every bike rider should do all year round, regardless of the season. What is that?
Yeah, so this is really important if you haven't ridden your bike in a while, if it's a bike that's new to you, or you're just wanting to sort of reassess after riding for a little while. It's called the ABC Quick Check. The A stands for air, the B stands for brakes, the C stands for chain, and the Q stands for quick release. And so air means having enough air in your tires, so you want to have your air somewhere in the range listed on the sidewall of your tire. If your tire is flat, you may need to either patch, replace, or just pump up the tube that's inside your tire. And you also want to check to be sure that your tire is free of any debris, glass, things like that. Again, especially important if you haven't ridden in a while. B stands for brakes, and so for safety reasons, obviously you want to have good functioning front and rear brakes. You do most of your braking with the front of your bike, so it's particularly important, but really having both function properly is ideal. So the way you do that, you put the bike on the ground, and using the rear and the front brakes separately, with the rear you should be able to squeeze the rear down and skid your tire along the ground just a little bit. The front you should be able to use to engage and lift the rear of your tire bike. They should be able to bite sufficiently. You also want to check your levers and make sure that you're not bottoming out on your bars, so you want to make sure there's at least 2 fingers worth of space there between the bar and the lever.
Okay.
And you also want to check your pads to make sure that there's sufficient rubber on the pads. Often they have a line and they should be not worn all the way down.
Okay.
C stands for chain, and that is just checking to be sure you have a fully functioning chain. You may have not ridden your bike. If it was stored outside, it might be rusty. You may need to replace your chain. If your chain is functioning properly and isn't rusted, it may just need to be lubricated or just cleaned. And really you should be lubricating your bicycle chain, depending on how much you ride, something like once a week. Q stands for quick release. Quick releases are used to secure the wheels to the frame. You want to make sure it's all the way folded over and in the closed position.
And you were also mentioning there are some specific things that winter bike riders should do to prepare their bike for riding in the winter. What are those?
Yeah, there's a couple considerations that are particularly important in the winter. Really thinking about your tire as a place where your bicycle meets the road. You want to think about whether you have the right tire for the type of riding you want to do. Some people change their tires to either a larger tire, maybe a studded tire, or some other type of winter setup on their bike. A larger tire provides a larger contact patch. You might even adjust the pressure down slightly, still staying in your comfort zone for your tire, but that allows the tire itself to spread out a little more surface area. Studded tires allow for a little bit better grip on ice in particular. No tire is going to provide perfectly secure grip on ice, so you really need to be careful there, but studs can provide a little more confidence and just a little more grip.
So let me just ask, is this a good bike to ride in the winter?
Yeah, as far as this bike being, very focused on utility, very capable, the brakes are in good functioning condition, the tires are actually a decent width. One thing that would really improve this bike is fenders. And so riding in the winter is often wet, whether it's actually precipitating or you have sort of melted snow on the ground or ice. You want to, in general, be able to protect yourself from those elements so that you don't get cold and you don't become uncomfortable. And so there's a couple different types of fenders that you might encounter. One is a simple mud flap off the back, and that's usually secured to either the frame or the seat post, and that just protects the rider from debris coming off the rear tire. This is sort of set up as a classic commuter, so it already has full coverage fenders, and so those are fenders that cover the entire, circumference of the tire, the top portion, and then the width that protects both the rider and the bike from water, debris, etc. The other consideration for riding in the winter is visibility and lighting. On your bike, you absolutely need a really functional and high-powered front and rear light so that drivers can see you, and ideally, because it gets darker, so you can actually see the road to avoid different road debris, potholes, etc. Lights also come in a couple of different varieties in terms of whether they're battery-powered, USB, or dynamo-powered, which is when they're powered by the hub of the bicycle.
Cool. Okay, Nate, so let's talk a little bit now about what to do after a ride through the winter. I just rode this over through the slush and snow, and it's pretty messy. How should I care for the bike now?
Yeah, you've really been riding this through the winter.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so what you do with your bike and how you take care of it after a ride has a lot to do with how much time you have.
Okay.
And so generally you want to start with the drivetrain, which is the chain, the front crankset, the rear cassette, and the derailleurs. And then if you have time, move to the braking surfaces. And beyond that, the frame usually needs some just superficial cleaning at different points throughout the year. So we'll start with the drivetrain.
Okay.
So the first thing you want to do is dry your chain. If that's all you have time for, that's really important because that'll prevent it from rusting, particularly if you're not using the bike every day, which is pretty common in the winter depending on conditions. And so what you want to do is take a relatively clean rag, old piece of t-shirt, old towel, and backpedal the bike while it's up in a stand, flipped upside down, or just sitting. Apply pressure to the different sides of the chain and take any surface, grime, grease, dirt, or water off the outside of the chain. And do that, move around the rag, do that until the chain is mostly dry.
Okay.
Yep, if that's all you have time for. And from there you can move on to things like cleaning the derailleurs, cleaning out the cassette with a old toothbrush or a specific bike brush, and sort of taking that superficial grit and grime off the outside of the crankset.
Okay.
Great. From there, if you have time, you can move on to the braking surface. And so the braking surface on your bike as a rim brake bike is the side of the rim. And what that does, it'll ensure that you have a good clean braking surface when you're trying to brake and stop in the winter. When there's dirt and water on the braking surface, it can make it hard and not provide a good interface. If you want, you can even go so far as to clean the brake pad by sort of shimmying a rag in there and getting that nice and clean.
It's kind of like flossing.
That's right, flossing your brake pads. And then moving on to the frame. So if you have time, you can sort of clean the frame, particularly the undercarriage of the frame, right under the down tube, for instance.
Yep.
And the back of the seat tube if you don't have fenders,
Yep.
where you're going to see a lot of buildup. And at its worst, it can eat away at your frame's material. The salt on Michigan roads can really do a number on a metal frame.
Okay. Got it. So how much time should I take after I ride in the winter for cleaning my bike?
Yeah, doing just a little bit after each ride goes a long way. So spending just a couple minutes on the chain, for instance, is a great place to start. If you have more time, sort of move up that chain of priorities and decide, what you have time for in a given session.
So it's better to do a little bit of maintenance after every ride than say, okay, I'm going to take 20 or 30 minutes at the end of the month.
That's right. Yeah, doing a little bit after every ride goes a long way. Maybe budgeting a little more time weekly to give a little more of a comprehensive cleaning or wipe down. And that'll keep your bike happy when spring comes and you're ready to ride a bit more.
Cool. Thanks, Nate.
Sure.
Thanks for watching the first of our 2 videos about biking in the winter. Be sure to watch our second video where we focus on preparing you, the bicyclist, for winter riding.